Today's been interesting, hasn't it? The rumours earlier on this afternoon were that Mark Noble had resigned from West Ham United. He only just begun his new role of sporting director earlier on in the year, just 3 weeks ago. But the gossip today was that he'd handed in his resignation, and that was that. Now, Sean Whetstone provided an update which the club described the rumours as malicious, so they denied any resignation from Mark Noble. Ex-West Ham employees provided an update which goes a little bit further, which suggests that the club had a meeting with Mark Noble today, that no resignation had been offered from Mark Noble, or if it had been withdrawn, but there was some discontent from Noble regarding his role and his say over recruitment, and that the description of Mark Noble's role was a little bit vague, and perhaps that is where the confusion was coming from. So that's what we have been told. So the rumours began with Mark Noble offering to resign from West Ham, and it ended with there's been a meeting to some extent. Now, everything I say from here on in is my opinion only. That's what we've heard. This bit is my opinion. Just for clarity. Just for clarity. This is just an opinion, and that is that. And it was always going to be difficult for Mark Noble starting this role, which carries huge responsibility at a well-run club. He could go into the best-run club in the country, whether it be Brentford or Brighton, in this role, and it's a difficult job to do. Starting it in the January transfer window as well was always going to be a little bit wild and make life a little bit more difficult for him, because traditionally the sporting director, under that role, your responsibility is overseeing the transfer window. And it's not just the transfer window itself, it's the preparation, it's getting ready for the transfer window. Meetings happening prior to January with the manager, with Rob Newman, with the chairman, to work out exactly how much money they've got, who they're going after, what they're going after, so that when the January transfer window opens, Mark Noble is perfectly aware of what's needed and who they want, so he can spearhead the negotiations, so he can be in charge of the negotiations and try and get the targets from West Ham United into the football club. So beginning the job on the 2nd of January, I feel Mark Noble was to some extent already at a disadvantage, and that's before you take into consideration his, I say, lack of experience, his no experience, and then thirdly, the relegation pressure as well, because when he accepted this role, which was at the start of the season, I'd imagine the expectation was going to be, comfortably sail through the season, sitting mid-table between the first match day and the last match day, hopefully finish in the top 10, have a good run in European football. But to be a sporting director of a football club in a relegation battle must carry immense pressure. You get it right, you probably remain in the Premier League. You get it wrong, now there's no guarantees you'll get relegated, but you certainly don't help. You might increase the possibility of getting relegated if you get it that wrong. So there's a huge pressure on Mark Noble going into this one. And if there is discontent between Mark Noble and West Ham United over what his role is, one can only assume it's one of three things here. It's either the signing of Danny Ings, it's either the sale of Ekwah, or possibly third, which is not signing somebody that Mark Noble would like to see. We don't know who it is yet because we haven't got him. And then it would probably lead into the signing of Danny Ings. Possibly this has come off the back of the Danny Ings injury, because there's something must have triggered this. Like I said, it cannot, if it's 3 weeks in and he's already unhappy, it has to be in regards to responsibility. As I said, his job should be to get the budget from the chairman, work with Rob Newman, work with David Moyes, put together between them a list of people, and then for him to go after it. But the dynamic, the working dynamic was already there between David Moyes and Rob Newman. We got told in the summer Rob Newman was responsible for the negotiations. We signed 9 players in the summer, so somebody was bloody busy with negotiations anyway, whether it is Newman or whether it was David Sullivan. And you can see Newman in a lot of the negotiations. You saw it with Scamacca. Scamacca's agency was putting up their own videos of him leaving Italy to come to London. Rob Newman is prominent in a lot of their footage. That's not even something the club have put up as a puff piece to say, wow, look at our new head, look at Rob Newman, look how busy he is. That had nothing to do with West Ham. That was Scamacca's side of things, putting up the footage of Rob Newman. So there was already some working dynamic which had successfully overseen 9 negotiations in the summer. Mark Noble's getting in there. He's ideally taking control of that. I say ideally in regards to a traditional sporting director role, not necessarily in regards to Mark Noble, the inexperienced sporting director. So for him to get involved and take over that it was probably always going to cause a little bit of fraction, a little bit of tension between Noble and or Moyes and or Newman, possibly and or David Sullivan as well. So it was a very difficult role, and like I said, starting the job in January is far, far from ideal. But the Danny Ings thing has got to be what has triggered this. This is my, like I said, this is my guess. And I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps Mark Noble was against signing Danny Ings. We've gone ahead, we've gone and signed him. He's got injured, and now Mark Noble will be turning around thinking, hang on a minute, I'm supposed to be responsible for overseeing the recruitment, and we've now got a £50 million player on 125 grand a week out for a month, and the pressure's back on to go get somebody. But this is the last thing. This is the last thing West Ham need. There's a week to go in the transfer window. That lot need to be singing from the same hymn sheet. When I say that lot, I mean the four main ones that I've mentioned already, with Sullivan, Noble, David Moyes and Rob Newman. Them four need to be in sync. They need to be singing off the same hymn sheet. And I'm a little bit, I have to be honest, I am a little bit worried by it. Like I said, this could be complete rubbish. There could be absolutely nothing in this. Someone's made up a rumour and there is nothing in it whatsoever. But sometimes it's what people don't say rather than what they say. And Sean Whetstone's update, like I said, described the resignation from Mark Noble as malicious and untrue. But there was nothing in that update regarding Mark Noble being unhappy or anything like that. He's left that bit out. Perhaps he hasn't been given an update, doesn't feel the need to give one, but ex-West Ham employees certainly did, which insinuated a meeting occurred today between the board, well, let's say the board, a meeting between West Ham and Mark Noble had occurred, and it felt like it had gone well, and perhaps that would sort things out going forward. Either way, it's not ideal, is it? If that, like I said, if that is true, it is not ideal whatsoever. We need to get this right. This next week, this next 7 days in the transfer window could be crucial to us remaining in the Premier League. And as simple as that, really. That is what's at stake at the minute. We are playing for our Premier League place next season. We need to get this right. We can't afford errors. We can't afford Mark Noble being unhappy. We can't afford Mark Noble's inexperience causing problems in the transfer market. We can't afford David Moyes dithering or being stubborn. We can't afford Rob Newman making errors. We can't afford anything going wrong. We've got one wrong with Danny Ings. Now, I'm not going to change my mind. I think Ings was a good signing. I still think he might prove to be a good signing between now and then. Well, I say between now and then the season. Between the end of February and the end of the season, Ings might prove to be a good signing. I think it's just bad luck. I know people will say he's injury prone. I dispute that, because my definition of injury prone is somebody that gets injured little and often. Kurt Zouma is injury prone. Misses 6 games, plays 8 games. Misses 4 games, plays 5 games. That to me is injury prone. But Danny Ings is somebody who had 2 major injuries, and I think he missed, I read somewhere, he missed 22 games in 6 seasons. To me, that is not injury prone. It's just unfortunate. But regardless, perhaps that is what's caused a little bit of a dispute or discontent within the recruitment team at West Ham United. And like I said, Mark Noble traditionally should be responsible for it. But allowing him to begin in January is probably always going to be a risky thing, especially, no, it's not Mark Noble's fault, especially with uncertainty over David Moyes thrown in as well, because again, that's something else the sporting director is usually responsible for, and that's the hiring and firing of the manager at the club. But when you've got Mark Noble, who used to play under David Moyes, coming in above David Moyes in a traditional hierarchy of a club, you have to question if that's the case, or is he there because David Moyes wants him to be there? Going by Moyes' comments in the media a couple of weeks ago, it would suggest that Moyes perhaps isn't too keen having Mark Noble at the club, because I'm sure he's got a lot of respect for him. But when Moyes spoke about him, he basically said, oh yeah, we made that role, we gave Mark Noble a job, and it was very much, you know, jobs for the boys. And David Moyes insinuated that. And it also smacked of, you know, little respect for Mark Noble in that role to some extent. And again, you'd have to understand why Moyes might be a bit reluctant to big it up a bit, because like I said, it's his first ever job. But that were the rumours today. I mean, it was a little bit interesting. I have to be honest with you, when it first came out, I took it with a bit of pinch of salt, because I thought that is something that's massive. And that would require, if Mark Noble had walked away, I'd be surprised, because, and the reason I say that is because part of me thought, well, you know, Mark Noble, he does wear his heart on his sleeve. Could he walk out on, you know, with his principles intact to some extent? I thought, well, I'm not sure, because he's also been captain at West Ham for so long under this board. He knows what to expect. If he has gone in there and struggled, or his role hasn't been quite clear, he's unhappy with the authority he's got given, it should come as no surprise to him. Had we gone and got a sporting director from the Bundesliga with loads of experience, he's come in and gone, hang on a minute, I need complete control or I'm leaving. You'd say, well, that's fair enough. He can demand that because of his experience, but also he perhaps wouldn't expect to have Sullivan and David Moyes and really traditional old school manager who likes control. He might not expect that. But Mark Noble, he knows what David Moyes is like as a manager, and he also knows what this board are like. So he's got no excuses to some extent. I don't have much sympathy for Noble, unless they had those conversations in the summer and it was quite clear, and it was to Mark Noble, you will be in charge of recruitment. That's a bit different. But if it is all a little bit vague, the last thing you can do is agree to something with somebody that you know what they're like and then complain that they're up to their old tricks. That's all I'm going to say. A leopard doesn't change its spots in that. Well, David Sullivan, he probably doesn't really change his. That's my thoughts on it anyway. Also, Ekwah has joined Sunderland. Now, like I said, when I was saying the possibilities why Mark Noble might be upset, this is the bottom of the list for me. He's obviously spoke out in the past about Grady Diangana when we sold Diangana to West Brom. Mark Noble was very public about how unhappy he was with Diangana going there. I actually think, given the lack of success to some extent of Diangana at West Brom, you know, Mark Noble's had to backtrack a little bit. He's almost apologised a little bit for his outburst. So I think Ekwah leaving, I'm not sure that would... It might frustrate Mark Noble to some extent, but I certainly don't think he'd walk out of a job off the back of it. In regards to Ekwah, I think this is a fantastic move for the player. I think it's a brilliant move for Sunderland. No transfer fees, a free transfer from West Ham to Sunderland. There is clauses involved though, so if Ekwah is successful at Sunderland, West Ham will then get money off the back of it. There's also a sell-on clause on there, so again, should he be successful and leave Sunderland for X million, West Ham will scoop Y% of that. Apparently it's 25%, but that's unconfirmed. So obviously if he leaves Sunderland for 10 million, we'll get 2.5 million. It's still quite a low fee. The one thing I don't like, which is a little bit... I don't believe some of these things. I'm quite sceptical when it comes to some things. It came out today that we didn't actually pay for Ekwah. We actually got him on a free transfer, despite, since he joined a couple of years ago, that we'd paid 1.5, 2 million for him. It's not, oh no, we actually didn't pay for that. I'm going to assume we did pay for him. The club are just trying to save face a little bit and claim we didn't. In regards to the player, like I said, a brilliant signing for Sunderland. I watched Elite on Sunday. Sunderland played Michael Carrick's team, and Elise played there and he was fantastic. One of the best players on the pitch. He's really excelling at Sunderland. And funny enough, Ekwah and Elise are two players I've held in high regard. I'm not getting into the academy chat. I think it's one of those conversations I would do better having a conversation about rather than just say my piece and that's that. I need somebody to bounce off of. There's some topics come up. I think I'll be better having that as a conversation. And the academy and the opportunities given to players from the under-21s at West Ham is one of those topics. But in terms of Ekwah, him, Elise, two of the players I actually expected to make it at West Ham. And I don't say that about everything. I do think there's an element of overrating the youngsters at West Ham from the fan base in general. But I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I've never understood why it's talked down at when people want to see the youngsters given a chance. It's almost seen as a bad thing. I think that's a good thing to have as a fan base, to take pride in seeing players step up from the academy and having this determination to see your youngsters come through the academy and make it in the first team. I think it's a brilliant thing to have, and I'll never apologise for wanting to see some of the players from the under-21s get a crack in the first team. Will it be good enough? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. And my problem is when we don't get the opportunity to discover, and I think that's my problem with Elise and Ekwah, where they never really had a crack. But given the circumstances, the opportunities are few and far between. Ekwah can't be registered for the Conference League. Well, he can be registered, but that's the point. We've got to register him. Whereas other youngsters at club like Ollie Scars, we don't need to register him. We can play him. He doesn't count as part of the 25-man squad. Ekwah would, because he hasn't been at West Ham for long enough. So we can't play him in the Conference League. Opportunities apart from that, you know, funny enough, the next game against Derby, he might have had a crack at some game time. Whenever I've seen him play though, whether it be for the under-21s or brief appearances for the first team friendlies and so on, I think he's looked really good. really good engine on him in midfield, box to box, good passing range, good shot on him, good in the tackle, a leader as well. I think Sunderland are getting a really good centre midfielder. He took a bit of a swipe. Ekwah took a bit of a swipe at West Ham, or David Moyes, whichever way you want to take it. When he left, when he was at Sunderland, he said it's good to join a club that still gives opportunities to some of the youngsters, and that is a bit of a dig. I mean, it's expected, I guess, when he leaves and he's never really had a crack at West Ham. I understand why he's looking back thinking, I wasn't given an opportunity, I'm going to a club that's got one. He's former teammates with Elise, and Elise is thriving at Sunderland. It's no wonder he's gone up there, and I think he'll be a success. I do think he will do well at Sunderland. I think the Sunderland fans will really take to him because they've really taken to Elise, so there's no reason they won't take to Ekwah as well. And I'll be keeping an eye out for Sunderland. If they're on TV between now and the end of the season, I'll hopefully catch a couple of games and see how Ekwah's getting on, how Elise is as well, because I want to see these players go on and do well. It's like Freddie Sears. For bloody years I was checking how Freddie Sears was doing, wishing him well wherever he was at, whether it was Ipswich Town or anywhere else. I was wanting him to do well. And it's the same with other youngsters. You know, Josh Cullen, it's great to see him. He'll be in the Premier League next season. It's brilliant to see. Just because it doesn't happen at West Ham doesn't mean I don't want them to go on and have really good careers. I do. Like I said, it's pleasing to see Elise do that. I think Ekwah will too. I think Sunderland have got themselves a free transfer. You can't go wrong, really, can you? But anyway, yes, so there you have it. A bit of a funny one with Mark Noble earlier on today. I've got a funny feeling that it's not finished. I've got a funny feeling there's updates to come, whether it be tonight, tomorrow, next week. I think we've got a few updates to come in regards to this rumour, because while I think maybe the resignation part isn't true, I think maybe the uncertainty over his role, if you like, I think that may have a little bit of truth in it, but that's just my opinion, the vibe I'm getting anyway. So we shall wait and see. But good luck to Ekwah as well. Hopefully he smashes at Sunderland. Looking forward to it. And listen, if it's a success, if he's a success at Sunderland, it will benefit West Ham financially long term. It may not be loads of money, but at least we'll get some money for him. And fingers crossed though, we get the next one right. So yeah, but we'll maybe have a conversation. Maybe do a conversation with Gonzo about the academy prospects at West Ham United and opportunities for, because I know what a lot of people think, but just nice to have a conversation about it. Right, I'm going to stop waffling, otherwise I'm going to be in Belgium as a waffle maker. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it. Subscribe if you're new around here. I'll catch you tomorrow.